got to tell you a story before I introduce my guest for you now, and so I'm going to this posh do, and I had a guest on the programme who just plans parties, but does loads of social stuff out in that world where people have good times and they have functions and stuff. Her name's Liz Taylor, and I remember when I first met her, like the same name as the actress. So she invited me to one of her do's, and I thought, yeah, that was really nice of you, thank you. I got there, the cabaret was Gary flipping Barlow, and I've got a great picture of Viv and Gary on stage together, and the compere was being Gary Neville. And you know when you think, hang on a minute, this is slightly different than a posh do. This is an amazing do. She's with me now, and you are very interesting, Liz. I've never met anybody like you.
Just think this, though, Mike. If your name had been Gary, you could have been up there on the stage with them.
3 guys.
Just a shame that you were called Mike. You never got the gig.
One of Viv's mates is a really big Take That fan. And Viv said, I was at a do the other day, and Gary was singing, and he sang to me. And a mate obviously thought there was a little bit of licence there. Yeah, of course he did. And she showed this girl the picture, and she went, oh no, you really did. But tell you what, it's always lovely to have you in.
Can I just tell you a very quick story?
Yeah, go on.
When I did Howard Donnell's wedding, I'm ironing his shirt while he's writing his speech, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, is this really happening? I'm ironing Howard's shirt, he's in Take That, he's getting married. So, yeah, it's all in my book, all in my tailor-made book if you want to read it, Mike. Anyway, moving on, that's not why I'm here today.
It isn't, but, well, there's something I do want to come to in a bit, but we're talking about Elf on the Shelf.
Was that a coup or what?
Yeah, absolutely amazing. So, and we know all about Elf on the Shelf. It's an incredible, and the way it's grown, the way people now view that.
But you're talking to me like it's not real.
Well, it is real, isn't it?
100% real.
Yeah, of course it is, yeah. And this is part of your podcast that you're doing. This is your festive episode, and Catherine Tilsley is going to voice it, this one, for us. But tell me about it. For those that have suddenly gone, oh, hang on, I recognise the term Elf on the Shelf, but don't really know. Tell us.
So during lockdown I started a podcast called Events That Made Me, and it's grown, and we've just finished series 6, and I decided last year in the festive season that the only person really to interview was Mrs. Claus, because nobody knows what she does, you know, she's behind the scenes. So we interviewed Mrs. Claus, and I have to share that Kath Tilsley was the voice of it, but it is very, very real, and I researched it. So when you listen to it, there's a lot of history there. And this year, I was thought to myself, who can I interview? And so I spoke to Mrs. Claus, and I said, do you think that Elf on the Shelf would join you on the podcast? And she said, absolutely, she would. And so, yeah, and Elf on the Shelf is a very, very important part of Christmas, because they hide in the house and they decide who's on the naughty list and who's on the nice list. What list do you think you'd be on, Mike?
Probably the naughty list, if I'm being really honest about me, especially when I was younger.
I think you'd fluctuate between two, yeah, because of the very, very nice side to you. But anyway, moving on, Elf on the Shelf has interviewed with Mrs. Claus, and it's divine.
When you did Events That Made Me, I remember talking to you about podcasts, and podcasts are ubiquitous now. Everybody, oh yeah, podcasts, yeah. I remember when you first did it, that they weren't that much of the mainstream, were they? You sort of did that quite early on.
Well, no, I did it during lockdown, so it wasn't that long ago. I interviewed you, if you remember.
You did,
Can you remember?
Yeah, but at that time I remember thinking, what's a podcast, really? I didn't get it, if I'm being honest.
I think that it's a great way of communicating, sharing stories, sharing lives. I mean, there are a few that I listen to that I love. When I'm lying on the beach, I listen to Alan Carr because he's hilarious. And it's like reading a book, isn't it? It's like listening to a book. But what I did was I opened my black book during that period to the likes of, you know, celebrities, superstars and what have you. And they were all only too keen to have something to do. So it was a great time for me. And now it's very competitive, and people are doing mental health health, they do all sorts of stuff. But I just want mine to be fun. I've got Jimmy Anderton lined up for the next one when I can pin him down in January. He's agreed to do it, so I'm going to do a sports podcast. But yeah, it's fun.
One thing that fascinates me about you, and I know that, and right, you are right, I can be really, I think, a decent person, but I am quite volatile and combative, the other side of my personality. And you're always, you are warm and approachable, but I've also seen you in action with your business head on, and you can be very, very functional and quite assertive, and if you want something doing. But I often wonder how it is for you when, Gary, can you come down? I've got this due. Yeah, of course, no problem. Do you ever get anybody that turns around and says, oh, no, I don't fancy that?
Would you turn me down?
No.
Exactly. There's your answer.
Yeah.
I think the thing is this, it's mutual respect. And I've worked with the same, so in my event business, the Taylor Lynn Corporation, I've worked with the same suppliers for 30 years. And you know what the secret is? You buy them fish and chips at lunchtime and you say thank you at the end of the gig. And it's mutual respect, because without them, I couldn't do the job. And it's the same with, you know, whoever I'm working with. And it works both ways. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And that has always been my ethos.
Lily Sweeney was my mum, an amazing woman, and she brought these 5 kids up in this quite poor working class environment in Salford. And my mum always told me, God bless her, Michael, always say please, thank you and excuse me. She said, if you do that, manners cost nothing, you'll be alright. And I've got to say, I have done my whole life. Please, thank you, excuse me. And you know, occasionally, although it very rarely happens for me, and never for you, say sorry when you're wrong.
I do. I've had 5 years of therapy since my last divorce, and now I do say sorry. I'm a much nicer person, but there's 2 things that I say to my kids. You can't buy breeding, and the only thing that we all take with us is our name.
Right.
We've digressed completely from Elf on the Shelf here.
Can I have a listen to Elf on the Shelf? Have a listen to this.
And between Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve, my job is to visit all the children and report back to Mr. and Mrs. Claus. So all the children that have been really naughty go on the red list, and the good kids go on the green list. And then on Christmas Eve, I head back to the North Pole until next year. It's very straightforward.
The red list. I can't do accents. That's lovely. I do like that.
Only Kath Tilsley would do that.
Yeah, she is. She's amazing. So I've got.
And you know what, Mike? We've sent it out to hospitals. Royal Manchester Children's Hospital, the Royal Marsden Hospital in London snapped it off us at the very, very beginning. And it's a great thing to share. Everybody just needs us. Everyone needs a laugh and a smile and a giggle.
Yes, we do. I always need a laugh and a smile and a giggle, and I like a bit of banter, and a hug's nice occasionally.
It is.
A proper hug. I don't mean a fake hug, but you know, a proper, go on, give you a hug. That's, I think, occasionally needed.